Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Henry Gilroy, co-executive producer of Star Wars Rebels. You're listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Welcome to the 200th episode of Aggressive Negotiations. Can you believe it has been 200 episodes already of Star Wars goodness, Star Wars love, and everything that we enjoy exploring and discussing in the Star Wars galaxy? I am, of course, Jedi Master John Mills, and logging his 200th mission here on Aggressive Negotiations along with me is my dear, dear friend, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, how are you today?
John, I am doing great. I am ready for another 200 missions of Aggressive Negotiations. It's been so much fun. You know, when I think back to us starting this show, us, thinking about doing this show in the first place, and really just being a vehicle for us to get together and talk every week about something that we love so much. And, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has supported us, who has followed us on Twitter, who interacts with us weekly, has taken time to give us reviews on Apple Podcasts to help out the podcast in that way. Like, thank you so much for spending time with us each and every week. The fact that you would do that means the world to John and I, and so our hope and our goal is to make sure that, for the next 200 episodes, you have just amazing Star Wars content with us each and every week. Two guys who love Star Wars. We're not afraid to every once in a while say things that we don't completely agree with or like, but it's all done from a place of love. And so, thank you for enjoying the Star Wars love with us each and every week. So, I could go on, but I think something really special planned, especially, John, as we look towards not only our 200th episode, but as we look towards the fact that as this show comes out, the Clone Wars is returning this Friday.
Yes, it is. The Clone Wars is coming back, and so we have a very special chock full. You may have noticed that the running time on this episode that you downloaded is much longer than usual, and that is because we're going to take you through a tour of a very special arc from the Clone Wars, something that will have to do with what we're going to see in the 7th season, where we are going to be following Maul as he establishes his crime syndicate and gets up to all sorts of shenanigans with Obi-Wan and Mandalore. And this is all going to play a very big part, as we all know, in Season 7. And so I think, let me get this out of the way. thenerdparty.com/contact. That's how you can reach out to us through email. You can reach out to us at the Jedi Masters, at Join Nerd Party on Twitter, the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. And in the interim, Matt, I've got my Disney Plus queued up right here to stream these 4 episodes. So we are going to be starting with Season 5, Episode 1, Revival, that is going to let us get back in on what is going on with Maul and Savage Opress.
And so John and I are ready, and we'll give everybody a countdown. We're zeroed out for the episode, and we'll all hopefully press play at the same time. So that is 3, 2, 1. Play. Orchestral fanfare.
Yes, everybody's favorite non-Williams version of anything.
It's just good, right?
And of course, I love the little aphorism: "Strength of character can defeat strength in numbers." Is such a they got so poetic with those openings. Mm-hmm. I looked forward to them every single week. I just looked forward to what they were saying.
Well, it's so interesting for this episode because they're following on Season 4 and the reemergence of Maul, and but the rest of this arc won't actually play out till later in the season. So we start off the season kind of continuing where we left off, but this episode is really about them trying to build up their their empire that we will see later on in the season. So I just kind of love how this starts with this, station and all of these security droids, and they're searching, just scanning and everything. And
well, I think it's really interesting too, because the droids, like it's droids all obviously became more and more of a focus for Star Wars in terms of like an ethical sort of examination. Of course, everybody loves to talk about L3, but like Clone Wars was doing it to begin with, right? Like, yeah, the battle droids were a little clumsy and funny, but you were like, oh, that's just a pseudo personality. Whereas like these security droids are getting whacked, and you kind of feel bad for them.
Yeah, they're
like,
just doing their job.
It feels like a murder.
Well, and it's interesting too is that we're getting here is that Maul and Savage are looking for, they're basically just robbing this place,
Yeah.
And they find all of these credits here, and what we're going to have them do with these credits is going to be fascinating.
Well, I also, something that I really think about, and I think scenes like this with Maul and Savage really highlight the sort of like the dark mirror they are of Obi-Wan and Anakin, because you have the more measured, experienced, more like Maul, if anything, is more rooted in the teaching, the true nature of the dark side, right, than almost anybody else we run across, because he's no longer tied to the Sith or anything like, he's no longer an adherent. He's a true believer, sort of thing, sort of the way Kenobi is. And then you have an impetuous, angry, impulsive student who Maul sort of indulges because he has Maul does. Let me ask you that question. Does Maul love Savage?
I think that what we see at the end of this series, after the fight with, Sidious and him, killing his brother, I do think that he has feelings for him, but they're wrapped up in what's going on right now, which is this master-apprentice type of relationship. And, obviously, this whole thing is wrapped up in the fact that we get Maul being so consumed with the idea of destroying Kenobi. And, he makes a really important note to Savage, which is that we have to find a way to survive.
Right.
And so, it's not just about going after Kenobi, but it's also about trying to find a way to survive that too, since, Kenobi is not the only Jedi out there.
Right. And I don't know, in terms of love, it does. I would say yes, just because of the fact that just because you're a Sith or just because you're an adherent of the dark side doesn't mean that you're immune to any sort of tenderness. Because I would go back to Palpatine on the lava shore with the burned up Anakin. The music cue and Palpatine's movements, it's not that there isn't some sort of a bond or some sort of a love between these sort of people. It's that they always shelve it in favor of their own selfish ends, right? It's always going to be about them at the end of it. Whereas you see, this marked difference here with because we're in the scene now where Obi-Wan's once again, Detective Obi-Wan is on the job with Adi Gallia, and you see even with two Jedi equals who are truly functional, that it's about others. They're concerned about the safety of others,
right? Not
just themselves.
Well, I mean, even them just hearing about them going to Florum and that that means Hondo and pirates, I think obviously Kenobi knows that the pirates are going to be no match for two angry semi-Sith.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting too, though, because of the fact that Hondo and his gang, Hondo in a sense, he's the amoral one. We all know and we all love Hondo. He's the amoral one. He is truly, he's running a pirate gang. That's a bad thing. But it's almost in a sense comical just in the fact that they're always the ones getting beaten up. They're always like, everybody's like, you know what, let's go to Florum. And it's like, you got to imagine that it's some, it's so funny that it's just these poor guys who are just honestly just trying to make their way, granted in a bad way, are like just continually getting horsewhipped like this.
Yeah, the scene too here where the pirates board their ship, and they basically are going to give them an ultimatum here of, join us or die, and we can make you rich, and it just shows you too that these pirates, like, they truly are pirates. They only really care about one thing. There's no loyalty between them. It's all about, how much you're going to pay me.
But it's also so interesting that that's the choice. Join us or die. Oh, and by the way, you can be rich. It shows how the priorities are different. The pirates overlook the threat for the reward, whereas the reward is completely secondary to Maul.
Yeah.
And can I just say, this ship that we're in this scene where the pirates are talking with them, the lighting, you know what the lighting of it and the layout of it reminds me of? And I don't know if this is intentional or not. The supposedly Gorn freighter from Star Trek 3. Right? From the beginning of Star Trek 3, if anybody's familiar with that, the freighter that brings Valkyries.
Yeah, you're right. No, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that ship is, one we had seen in the Zygerian arc, and it's a ship, we'll kind of see every once in a while in the Clone Wars as they kind of use assets. And so...
I also will say that... even though it's just briefly been shown, I love the fact that a Star Wars / George Lucas series with Hondo's Pirates did have the opportunity to have actual 1950s looking flying saucers in it.
Yeah, it looks like they came.
It's so appropriate,
straight out of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
yeah, it does. It does. Oh, and Hondo, everybody's favorite. Hondo is such a great character. He's such an incredibly rich character. It will continually blow my mind that a character that the first time I encountered him was sort of like a throwaway, seemed like a one-off. He became, granted not in the same level of evil, but for anybody who watched Lost, he's like a Ben Linus character, where the first time you meet him, it's like, oh, look at that quirky little guy. And then he gets more interesting as it goes on, all the way to the point where at the end, you kind of feel love and pity for him.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting here, too, because, Hondo just says to Maul, like, you're not the first laser sword-wielding maniac to come after us. And, he has no idea the difference of the characters. I mean, even though they had captured Dooku, Dooku even has this kind of strange code, right? The things that he will or won't do. But Maul and Savage here, they have no code whatsoever other than to bow before us. And so I think it's really interesting that honestly Hondo just does not understand what he just got himself into.
Right, and it sort of, I think, makes the same mistake that Star Wars fans can make from time to time, which is they see a lightsaber, they presume they know everything about that character. And it's like, what a great lesson that even people who seem similar are incredibly different from each other. You have to judge people on a case-by-case basis. You can't just assume how things are.
And I love this conversation that he's having with Kenobi here, and he kind of goes through this whole history. Is like, the last time you were here, Grievous ruined our place. It's just, and now you bring these horned maniacs, and it's very funny to see this relationship that has built, over the few years of the Clone Wars with this character, and the back and forth of Hondo. Of being, sometimes kind of lovable and doing the right thing, and then other times being a scoundrel, and a little bit like, any of these characters they're kind of on the morally ambiguous side. You just never know which version you're going to get. Right.
And everything you said is spot on, and also Hondo completely ignores the fact that the first time, at least in the series, that he encounters Obi-Wan and Anakin, where we see them, he drugs them and captures them.
That's true.
Right? Yep. And he's the great put-upon one. And it's like, well, maybe this is a little bit of karma, Hondo. Maybe you shouldn't have done that in the first place when they were just showing up trying to figure things out. I love the fact that he has the lizard monkey on his shoulder.
Him being betrayed by these guys, it's like, there is a little bit of karma in that, too, of like, being on the other side of the pirate life when things don't go well for you.
Yep. Yeah. But you know what? I mean, the scene that we're at right now where we have this siege going on, between the pirates and Maul is there, on a couple of different levels. One, the staging of the fight, the way that the battleground is laid out, I always marvel at how well the sense of place and pace is with these types of scenes in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And the fact that we get this vision here of Maul, it's not the way it was supposed to go, but we see him as the general he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
The person leading the forces of evil out there. He was supposed to be Vader, and he just wasn't.
It's a great point. And I also love that for him, too, like he doesn't want to be facing Jedi at this moment. Like he has a plan he's trying to enact, which is to gather forces to his side and basically create his own little army. And so him being forced to face down, Kenobi and Adigalia here is just, that was not part of his plan today.
I think it's also very interesting whenever we see a scene like this where we have Savage fighting and we have Maul fighting. Maul used a double-bladed saber in a very balletic, fluid, graceful way. But I always love the fact that we see that for Savage, it's a crutch. He's not a particularly good fighter. He would probably get whooped if he didn't have that double-blade advantage. Whereas with Maul...
he'd be better with a single blade.
Right. And, look at Maul is using a single blade, and he's perfectly comfortable and good with it.
Yeah, I love that scene where Adigalia goes to kick Savage in the leg, and it just his leg doesn't move at all. It's like she hits Superman, and then the way she dies here is just so awful.
Yeah,
I remember the first time I saw this, I was shocked that they killed her.
Yeah, I am too, but I think that's always been one of the great strengths of the show is that it was willing to take those risks and take those steps and give you those shocks. The best shows for me are the ones that can surprise you through their entire run, and Clone Wars never stopped surprising me.
And just in case you ever wondered how good Obi-Wan Kenobi is as a Jedi, he can hold off Savage and Maul by himself and not end up injured in that scene. Like, that's impressive.
It is, and it is
especially
funny
since
to
the
me.
last time he tried that, he got his butt kicked.
Yeah, what's funny to me though is how the Clone Wars, and I'm not saying this as a dig in any way. I'm a huge Obi-Wan fan myself, but it seems that the Clone Wars in a lot of ways acts as the hagiography of Saint Obi-Wan. Like he is so. You struggle to find his flaws throughout the run of the Clone Wars, and I consider it a beautiful challenge to do so because I know that they're there.
Yes. Well, you like to point them out, and then I like to just point out that it doesn't really matter. So we all have our little flaws. Obi-Wan, fewer than most.
Oh,
so.
I love Obi-Wan. I think his student was even greater, though. So
This is just you were talking earlier about the lighting and the ship and everything, and think, here in season 5 at the beginning we can truly see that they have just progressed so far in this show by this point, and it just looks so good. And I do feel bad for Obi-Wan just having this tiny fighting spot, but when he pulls out those 2 lightsabers, the blue ones, he's got Adigalia's and his own. You're like, he's you get the feeling like he's ready to die in this moment. Like, if it takes him dying to try and bring these guys down, he will do it.
Yeah. Yes. And but also just the fact that we're not used to seeing Obi-Wan willing to throw down and basically just say, let's rock. All right, fine.
Yeah,
let's just do this.
True. Yeah. Normally he's trying to negotiate, but with these two, there is no negotiations. This is all aggressive negotiations.
Hey, there you go. No, but that's that is one of the things that I think also speaks to why Obi-Wan is such a great hero character, is because the only time he fights with abandon is when there is absolutely no other option. He go to the Revenge of the Sith. He's trying to save Anakin and try to talk him out of the fight, even until the last possible moment. And even saying, I failed you. You're lost. He's still trying to talk him off the ledge after they've been going all across lava flows, trying to chop each other in half.
I think this is the scene to marvel at just how good the lightsaber battles are in the show. And how much I would have loved to have seen more of these type of battles. But this moment is just amazing. It's so cool when he lowers himself down, and uses the Force to kind of scoot himself out and cut off Savage's arm. It's just a great moment.
Well, I also love the fact that Savage leaks that witch's green mist when he's hurt, reminding you, not to foreshadow too much about the arc or his eventual end, the fact that Savage had his choice taken away from him in a large sense.
Yeah, it's very true.
This isn't really who he is. And that in and of itself is another mirror of Anakin.
Yeah.
Except Savage has less free will involved in it, but once he's captured by the dark side, it dominates his destiny.
Yeah, well, and that he was never really given a choice. Savage, his whole goal was to try and save his brother, right, in the fight. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't end up working out for him. And then he is literally reformed into this monster.
Yeah.
So, you talking about like this Dathmiri witch magic that they're both, as Maul gets his leg chopped off there, we see the way in which this kind of leaks out of them. And to me, that's fascinating because, as we've talked all of those times recently about the rise of Skywalker, it's these kind of moments that helped me think, okay, this is how Palpatine could have survived, right? We know there's all of this kind of stuff out there. So the Clone Wars just added so much to our thought process about different sides of the Force and everything. So I love it. I mean, I just really do. It's so much fun to come back to this show and watch an episode like this.
Yeah, I'll table any of my snarky comments about, how Maul coming back was actually so much cooler, but I concede the point.
I'm not arguing
right?
whether or not it was cooler. I don't think there is any argument there, John.
Oh no, I wasn't saying you were
for me.
I wasn't saying that you were going to argue. I was just saying that I decided for once not to be me about it.
Oh, okay.
Which everybody should be thankful for. But just also in terms of the lighting, it's easy to point out the tremendous leaps that they made in the lighting with the darker scenes, with the lightsaber battles and everything. But even here in the outdoor, when you compare the outdoor shots of, say, season 1 and season 2, with where they got to by season 5, the show is just like anything else with Star Wars. You see the evolution of technology and artistry go on, and it's such a satisfying experience to be able to see. Like it's almost like being in film school again, the way that the movies are, where it's like you're seeing the evolution of everything, and you feel like you're participating in it just by being the willing audience to view it and critique it.
I think it's so interesting too here is they search for those two.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I cut one of them in half. And then we get this moment with the Chancellor here. And he's like, oh, you don't need to worry about them. I think this matter is closed. And Obi-Wan's like, no, I don't think it's closed.
Yeah. Well, and everybody's still playing along with Palpatine by that point. Although you can see just in the body language of Mace and Yoda that they're not at a happy place with Palpatine anymore.
No,
it's no
Mace
longer like going to the
folded over there, like he's like, that is some BS you're shuffling.
Yeah, I can't prove what you're doing, but I'm going to find out what it is. But Anakin is the only one with an open body posture who is, he's skeptical. Yeah, he shares a look with Obi-Wan because he's still got his relationship with Obi-Wan. But when he's sitting there, he's the one without his arms crossed and without an overly skeptical look on his face. Even that is a little tell about how much more open Anakin is to what Palpatine is saying.
Well, and this whole moment of the Jedi talking about how the Clone Wars have kept them from basically doing their job, and that now the crime syndicates are growing, and there's not a lot that they can do about it because they're stretched so thin. And so, I love that Yoda says, Maul will reveal himself again, and at that point we will go after him. Trust me, Obi-Wan, we are not leaving this alone. And I appreciate that about Yoda's wisdom here. We see that he is truly a character who is worried about these things still, and definitely even agrees with Obi-Wan. And I think that moment right there just kind of shows you one of the reasons why Obi-Wan has made it to the council, right? Like, you kind of see the legitimacy of why Obi-Wan's made it to the council. This is not just a personal matter to him. He makes a very good logical argument for why this is very dangerous.
Yes. But again, it can also show why Anakin would be so frustrated, because he's always there, and he's always the little kid at Thanksgiving who feels like he should be at the grown-up table.
Yeah.
And how frustrating that's got to be for him. So, adding more shading to what goes on in Revenge of the Sith. Why he's so frustrated. Yeah, fine, be on the council, but you're not a master. What? I don't know. I'm always defending my boy Anakin. Sorry about that.
No, I mean, I do think it makes some sense there. And I think, obviously, one of the best things about the Clone Wars is the way that it allows us to, see Palpatine kind of build all these mistrusts into Anakin of the Jedi, and not taking anything away from Revenge of the Sith, but obviously Lucas just did not have time in that movie to be able to do that part of the story justice. It's the end result of 3.5 years of Palpatine slowly working on Anakin, but at the same time it's also those 10 years that we got between Attack of the Clones and the Phantom Menace too, right? That they still had that relationship there too. So he's been working on this project for a very long time.
Yes. And there's also, we'll table my unending praise of Revenge of the Sith, because I think that from here, we go from episode 1 of season 5, and we leap all the way to episode 14, an episode titled Eminence.
Yes.
So, you want to...
Yeah.
Let's jump into that. And we will start Eminence in 3, 2, 1, play.
I really do love that intro. I remember seeing the movie for the first time and just thinking, this is so cool.
I remember reading, one vision can have many interpretations. How appropriate.
Yeah.
How appropriate.
Well, and this is, I just as we're to preface this episode, obviously, what are they going to be doing? They're trying to bring all of these disparate elements together of the criminal underworld, and obviously all of these places in the criminal underworld have very different ideas of what should be done and how it should be done. And so they're taking on a very dangerous enterprise themselves.
Right. They are.
So, I mean, they're not playing with house money here. So
right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's so interesting to me with Death Watch, how it's just yet another example of how we were given something that was what everybody always asked for, but not in the way that they were expecting it. I know we've talked about Death Watch before and everything like that, but it's always been one of the best parts. And the fact that they found a way to merge Maul with Death Watch is,
brilliant.
It's like peanut butter and chocolate being put together, like very few things. Maybe put some bacon on it,
Yeah.
and that's upcoming.
Yeah, no, I love that, Death Watch finds them floating there, and we see the Darksaber, as he cuts through the door, and then him and Bo-Katan here bringing these two with them because, he's got the half of Maul's lightsaber, and he's like, who are these guys? Maybe they're worth taking with us. So I love the opportunism of Death Watch here and Pre Vizsla. I think it makes him a really fascinating character to think about joining forces with somebody possibly as dangerous as this. And just what a gorgeous shot right there! Oh,
right,
landing on Concordia.
I was about to interrupt you and say, and I also want to give a special shout out to the ships because it's easy to overlook the ship designs from Clone Wars. It's not easy, but it's something that people do, is what I mean to say, and just the ship designs, the way that the wings work. It's one of those things where when you see their ships function, you say, oh, yeah, it could work like that, couldn't it?
Yeah. Well, and I love this, too, is that they gave us the comic version of the legs for Maul for a couple episodes, and then they kind of bring him back down to earth a little bit with these more normal legs that they've, given him now. And so I love that. And, of course, having back, I would say, one of my all-time favorite characters for the Clone Wars, Bo-Katan, and having Katie Sackhoff voice her was just such a brilliant move on their part after her role as Starbuck. It's just like she fits so well in this role.
Oh, she does. I find it interesting that once again we have the rule of the Sith gone through, but one of the things that I've always found interesting is that Count Dooku is Darth Tyrannus, but he's the one Sith who barely ever uses his Sith name.
It's true.
And I wonder if that is because he was supposed to be the diplomat, and so Count Dooku is it's a brand name, basically.
Right.
People trust and knew Count Dooku. So for him to show up and say, no, I'm Darth Tyrannus, like he was a known figure beforehand. That's the way that I reason it out. That's the way it has to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting, too, because obviously, with Pre Vizsla knowing this rule, it just shows you, how well-versed in the galaxy and these different factions he is, I think, which is it's awesome. This is one of those places, too, where it's like, because we're right in the middle of the heart of the Star Wars story, more characters know more about what's going on than we get in later parts of the series, especially all the way to the sequel trilogy where it's been so long, people have forgotten because they didn't even grow up with this stuff.
You know what I just realized about the markings on Pre Vizsla's helmet? If you look at it, and I'm probably reading into it, but if you look at it a little bit in a certain way, it almost looks like the top of the Rebel crest. There's a resemblance there, almost like if you drew it out beyond where it gets cut off by the visor.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
You could sort of work your way into it.
Well, and knowing that Sabine seemed, she created the Rising Phoenix,
right?
For Rebels. So yeah, I think it's interesting. So I also think it's interesting here too. We learn, and we've kind of known that, Death Watch is about holding on to the ancient warrior ways of the Mandalorian. So we get this idea of, we talked about before, the ages of the Mandalorians. And they're in a different age right now than they used to be. And so just how different they are here. But I love that there's this connection between these two. And that they both hate Kenobi. And there's should we align ourselves with Sith again? Because the last time we did, that did not go so well.
Right. I also love the fact that it's Pre Vizsla, and we'll also punish Kenobi, and just Maul's body language in that scene is like, duh, yes, of course, that's always the bonus that I'm looking for, of course.
I mean, that's number one on the list.
Right.
Punish Kenobi. Check.
Yeah. It's almost like that perpetual Christmas list where you don't even mention what's at the top of the list because it's like you really should know, right? I'm starting with number 2 because you should know what's a permanent number 1 of what I want in my life.
What's interesting, too, here is we see Savage getting a new arm, and it just amazes me that, obviously, by the time of Episode 5, there's a real difference in cybernetic devices, because, this is a little bit better than the one Anakin got, but not great.
But not as good as the one Anakin's even going to get in Episode 3.
Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, you could almost reason out maybe there's something where so many people are losing limbs. Like, not to go grim or dark for our, like bringing in real world stuff, but like medical technology in times of war advances super fast because they want to save soldiers' lives and stuff like that. Now, obviously, they're not saving clone lives, but,
Yeah, I love here, too, is that their whole idea of merging with the Mandalorians is that they possess a code where the pirates did not, and they can use that code to their advantage. They can use that idea of honor to their advantage and twist it. And I think that's pretty fascinating and devious. It kind of shows you how smart Maul actually is.
Yep. And I also want to draw another similarity between Anakin and Savage in that we see when he wakes up here, and I know we're on the next scene and everything, but when he woke up and he's been put together by the droids, same sort of deal. He gets up and one of the first things he does is freak out and start destroying the things around him. Which I guess,
the conversation here between Maul and Vizsla, and, that Vizsla doesn't really want this to be about anybody else other than, Death Watch and other Mandalorians. He doesn't like the idea of joining with Black Sun or anybody else. But we get Maul here talking him into it, basically. And I think that's really, it shows you kind of how much charisma Maul actually has. And it's not just fear, but it's the ability to reason logically.
I love that a Feline is there. But
it's pretty awesome.
I also wanted to say here we're at the scene where where they're running around. We have these beautiful shots and everything. But the planet approach shots in Clone Wars rival anything that I've seen in an actual big budget film. Though the way that they show planet exteriors as ships are flying to them is just phenomenal. Absolutely.
Well, not only
phenomenal.
that, but I love you pointing that out, because I think what the Clone Wars does really well, and this is obviously what George established, which is the idea of doing establishing shots. Is making sure that you knew where you are, the landscape, so that as you move through the scene, then you know exactly where you're moving towards and where you've come from and all of that stuff. So I think it's really fascinating.
Yes, and I keep going back to the Feline thing, because it's like we're going to get with Thrawn in Rebels, where it's like it's an acknowledgement of, hey, if you're new to this, they're still cool. But if you're a longtime fan, this is our wink to you.
Yes.
It's a different context, but you kind of know what we're going with here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, the fact that they're on the cover of, Shadows of the Empire, it's like, and then to have them here is just wonderful. I also pretty much love that Maul just... I'm going to make him an offer again, refuse.
Yeah, right? Yeah. This is my brother Savage, and if anything were to happen to him, if a bolt of lightning hits him while he's flying back from Coruscant, then I will hold everybody in this room accountable.
Yeah, it's just got a great... Man, this is... Ooh.
Oh, what a great assassination just happened. If you're not watching along right now, which we hope you are, but if you're not, if you're listening in your car, this is the scene where Savage just... hurled his double-bladed lightsaber and beheaded everybody sitting at the conference table.
Yep, that was 5 heads in one shot.
And immediately elevated the guy that they want to work with. So
yeah, he's like, oh, yeah, well, we will join you.
Right. After careful consideration. Yeah.
I feel as though our paths are aligned.
Yes. Yeah. Let us celebrate this decision with the joining of chocolate and milk. Yeah, it's it is amazing too, because we were talking about the lighting in the previous episode. The lighting here as Vizsla and Maul are talking is so perfect. It's so beautiful. I mean, think about how difficult it has to be to get the lighting just right so that somebody who is red and black stands out in a volcano planet setting with a lot of grays around him. Like, that's just, that's not an easy task.
Well, and so that scene we just saw too, I was thinking as I'm watching it there, is that what we get there is Maul doing the exact same thing that Palpatine would have done to him. Like, you're not ready, you're not smart enough, shut up, watch and learn. And I just think that that's really fascinating to see how much, he had learned from his master about how to handle these people, right? And how he was handled. And so he's now doing that to others and, not remembering that it can be kind of alienating.
And Vizsla, it's Bo-Katan, her facial expression always betraying she knows that things are going south.
Yeah.
And Vizsla hasn't quite caught on how bad it's become yet.
I like that the Pikes are just like, yeah, I mean, we're just here to join you because, hey, we don't want to fight. So,
right.
Yeah.
Sure, let's do it.
You.
And we finally get to see Nal Hutta not finally, but like I always loved seeing Nal Hutta on screen, just because it's and the fact that the Hutt's council has people attending by HoloNet the same way that the Jedi do.
Yeah, it's
like I love the fact that teleconferencing is at that level. Wouldn't it be great to have a holographic me sitting next to you right now, Matt?
It would be.
Wouldn't that be great?
Awesome, actually,
it would make everybody's lives better. I think
it would. It would. I really love this too, of how the Hutts don't even necessarily realize just how much danger they're in. And I love that we've hired the bounty hunters like Embo and Sugi and Dungar to it's just and great and this is not going to go well.
But also the fact that Maul doesn't kill the person who threw a knife at him. He it just gets sent back to I'm good. This is one last chance for you to reconsider what's about to happen. This is your last moment.
Fight.
You can decide not to do this. But of course they decide
that
to
he
do it.
Doesn't just say, whatever they're paying you, I'll pay you double.
But that gets to the fact that Maul, again, when he bribes the pirates in the beginning, the money's a secondary thing to him.
It's true.
Join me or die. And then he doesn't really have anything to bargain with the Hutts, because their Hutts are always going to be able to outpay him at this point. He hasn't built his empire yet. And, and it also ties into Solo a Star Wars story, because we know what Crimson Dawn is going to start doing.
Yes.
They're the ruthless ones that cut the tongues out of people who talk back and stuff like that.
Yeah. I do love that with Bo-Katan. Yeah, I see negotiations went just as planned. So, apparently Maul loves his aggressive negotiations too.
Well, it's almost like a callback to the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
You're right about one thing, Master. Negotiations were short.
It's very true. This is the other side of that. So
right, yeah, yeah. This is the sociopathic murderer side of things.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like the Jedi fight to survive and get away, whereas Maul and company fight to survive and then slaughter everyone who stood against them.
Man, I do love this fight, though, between these bounty hunters and, because we've talked about this when we were talking about the bounty hunters and the ways in which these bounty hunters were able to stand up against Jedi-like characters here. And we see them put up a decent fight here against very powerful Force users. They're not able to, and they're not going to be able to hold their own forever, but they're not just immediately dead either, which is relatively impressive.
Well, it's just like Jango Fett, right? Where Obi-Wan flies with a droid and Jango Fett doesn't.
Yep.
And it's and Han and Lando and everybody, it's so easy for people to look at it and say, oh, well, Jedi can do anything. It's like, no, as Qui-Gon says to Anakin in The Phantom Menace, he basically says, nah, Jedi are not invincible, and Sith aren't either. There is a limit to what you're going to be able to do, and if you encounter a competent opponent, you're still in trouble. Everybody's got a puncher's chance. It's like boxing, right? Nobody thought Buster Douglas was going to beat Mike Tyson, but once you made it out of the first round with Tyson ran out of tricks. It was tough for him to fight. I don't know if I've aged myself with a Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas reference. So,
I also do kind of like that Maul here is like, they're bounty hunters. They're doing a job, and he respects that fact that they don't have allegiance, and there's no reason to go chasing after them to kill them.
Right.
Which is interesting that Maul has that kind of code.
I don't know if it's a code so much as
more like
he sees. Yeah, well, it's one of those things where you could almost make the argument that Maul realized that there's some sort of risk to going after them. They could inflict some damage, so they're not going to come after us. So maybe we can. I mean, if they're bounty hunters, maybe they can partner with them later.
I love this. So the only thing you can tell me is that I can find Jabba on Jabba's palace.
Yeah, and it's sad what happens to him. You know what that guy reminds me of though is what was his name? The slug from Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, Claude.
Claude?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Claude.
you know what he reminds me of is Sidney, what's his name, from the Blue Parrot in Casablanca, with the little fence type hat. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I cannot remember his, and I forgive me for not being able to remember his last name, but you know the character. He runs the Blue Parrot.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it really is amazing when you think about it. You know what this we're watching a scene right now where Death Watch and Maul are laying siege on Jabba's palace on Tatooine. In a sense, you can watch this play out and say to yourself, this is why Jabba doesn't really break a sweat about Luke. Like Luke walks in, he's like, I'm a Jedi, I could do all of these things, and Jabba's reaction is, yeah, okay, all right, sure. All right, kid, great. That's good for you. I mean, look at everything that Jabba has been through.
What I love, too, is that, obviously we visited Jabba's palace at the beginning of the series, and just how much better the animation is for it now is astounding.
Yes. Yes, it is. And again, Maul's offer, submit or suffer. Join or die. Which is Vader's, when he's talking to the Emperor in Episode 5, he will join us or die, Master.
I do love that, though, that Jabba just laughs and is like, yes, we'll join you. It's so Jabba the Hutt. Like,
yeah. Yeah, oh, you just slaughtered a ton of people that work for, all right, sure. No hard feelings.
I mean,
let's go ahead.
You killed Cousin Vinny, but,
right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, Hutt family gatherings.
Yeah.
Awkward at best.
What I love here, too, is the way in which Maul's ambition here has been growing with each takeover. And that he just told Vizsla, oh, you can still have Mandalore, but then we'll have, we're going to have all these other, systems.
Right, you'll
now.
give us cover.
Yeah.
You'll give us cover.
I love it. I think it's showing how he is basically trying to replace his former master.
Yeah, and what's interesting, too, is that we know that on this timeline that happens, that the Emperor sees value in letting him have it.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've talked about with Solo, a Star Wars story, the Empire shows up when the droid rebellion happens on Kessel, which is triggered by L3 and our gang of friends. And it's because... that in and of itself is an abject lesson. The Emperor lets it happen because when things go wrong, people want the Empire to come in. Right. So there's a win-win for him. either the crime syndicates keep everybody subdued, or they wind up needing help, and it's like the mob. It's like, okay, that mob's bothering you, but if you pay me $5, I'll protect you from them. Well, they're both still mobs, and they both suck. You're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, and I think it also think about what Palpatine was doing with the Jedi. The Palpatine was using them as an ability to get them wiped out. That's what the Clone Wars are all about.
Yeah.
And so in this way, having all of these crime syndicates come under the rule of Darth Maul, it allows Palpatine then to have an ability to control them, which I think will be fascinating to kind of see as we move into, the last season of the Clone Wars, how that all plays out. Because in Rebels, we don't see a ton of the crime syndicates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't see a lot of that.
Right.
And we see pirates like Hondo, but we're not seeing these massive syndicates. And so it makes me wonder, what happens in that moment where, we've got Maul with Black Sun, or Crimson Dawn, what we see in Solo and everything. How does all that play? Like, this is why I feel like we just need more in that time period with Solo, because there's so much rich stuff. And I have a feeling that Maul is being used by Palpatine for Palpatine to finally kind of put the final kibosh, basically, on all of these crime syndicates.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly right. Because like getting back to like the whole thing where it's like the crime syndicates keep everybody subdued, and then they ask for help, and the Empire shows up. Win-win. And so Maul gets his little fiefdom, but it's only for as long as Palpatine's going to give it. Maul still gets outmaneuvered. Maul never learns the absolute lesson that the best choice for him was just to go off and live on a farm somewhere. Just give up, dude. You're never going to... I believe that... Filoni that specifically referred to him as Sisyphus? Where, he keeps pushing that boulder up. But the thing is, he's choosing to keep pushing that boulder up. That's the difference between him and Sisyphus. Sisyphus is condemned to push the boulder up. Maul chooses to keep pushing it. And it's almost like people are standing off to the side, even like Obi-Wan. Like, dude, you don't have to push the boulder, right? You could choose to go somewhere else and do your thing. So again, it speaks to that whole thing of how rich a character Maul became, but just in a way that was so different than what we were expecting.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, and I think it makes, going into this next episode, Shades of Reason, just so interesting to see how this is going to play out, because now we are truly moving to Mandalore to stage the coup, to take over Mandalore and create this as the base.
Right, exactly. And, so I guess with you saying that, there's no reason to wait, is there?
No,
Should we jump right into Shades of Reason? Okay.
Punch it.
Why don't you give us a countdown?
3, 2, 1, punch it.
Yeah. Orchestral fanfare.
I just love that.
I love it.
Star Wars theme.
Yes. Okay, and alliances can stall true intentions. That's an interesting one.
Well, and I love how that plays into what we saw in the last episode at the very end, where Vizsla is talking to Bo-Katan and saying, this could go really south really fast, and we have to think of a way to basically usurp these guys. Otherwise, it's probably not going to go well for us. And, you think about this too, those neutral systems that they're talking about, those are all under threat, because if Maul is basically shadow running the Mandalorian system with Vizsla as the head, then you have a real problem, because what are those neutral systems going to then do?
Right. Right. And but again here, when Maul's laying out his plan to sow chaos.
Yep.
That's your role. That's your duty. That's what you're going to do. And the fact that what he appeals to is the same thing. Maul looks like the devil, obviously on purpose. And the devil always appeals to what primary cardinal sin that everybody is susceptible to: pride.
Yep.
Maul knows to go for Vizsla's pride. We'll be heroes. We'll sow chaos. You get to be the good guy.
Yeah, we
and
can
it's
be heroes
all a lie.
just for one day.
Just for one day.
Well, and this is what I love too, is that like you've got the plots inside the plots inside the plots with all this. Like Vizsla's whole plan is to let these guys help him take over Mandalore, and we take these two dudes out.
But he doesn't even realize that the crime syndicates have pledged loyalty to Maul.
Yeah.
Even if Vizsla is successful, he's screwed because these guys don't owe him any loyalty. So far as they're concerned, he's just the first group that Maul conned into working with him.
Well, and this is what I kind of like too, is that how smart Maul is to say that we have to use Vizsla as the head because we can't rule openly.
Right. And he gives Savage the same lesson that Qui-Gon gives in Episode 1. Greed.
Yeah.
Maul knows that greed is a powerful motivator. And so, again, you have another poetic rhyme. We see Qui-Gon use greed to manipulate somebody to a good end, arguably. But you see Maul, he knows greed is also a weakness. And so you see this split between, or is it a split? You could philosophically argue, well, is that a sin on Qui-Gon's part? Because he uses greed the exact way that Maul uses greed to get what he wants.
And this is what's so fascinating, too. We have this plan starting to play out where the docks are under control now of the Pikes. They're attacking. And, you have this pacifist, system. And how do you fight back against that? If somebody really does want to come and take you over. So it's, you get the Mandalorian people here, and they kind of have put themselves in a bad situation. And on top of that, I mean, visiting Mandalore is one of my favorite things that we do in this series.
Oh, yes.
Because I love how
absolutely
beautiful the architecture is that they create for this city.
Well, I love how angular it is. We're not used to stuff that is quite so angular. Like it looks like a big piece of abstract art. And it's always terrific as a result. And it's always so great whenever somebody like Savage reveals themselves. Where they just walk out and it's like, hey, sup? And they start laying into everybody. But I also want to point out something interesting that they do with the lightsabers when they're spinning fast is the color doesn't remain that white core that we're used to. Like when Savage is spinning his blade around in a circle, it grays out a little bit. It's a really interesting way to play with it. Like, it gets back to that lighting thing, I think. And Satine the Fearless, standing up against Death Watch, come on, look at Vizsla's helmet. You're going to tell me that you couldn't draw out the rest of the Rebel Alliance symbol underneath that?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that the Death Watch symbol, which I think is where they're going with that, does have a kind of a similarity to where we go with the Rebel symbol.
I think that also ties into, I don't know whether it's intentional or not, but if you look at Dooku's outfit carefully, you take that cape off, it bears striking resemblance to Luke's in Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. And it's not accidental. The Separatists become the rebels. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because they are fighting against a corrupt system. You could argue the Separatist cause is just in a lot of ways. It's just like it's corrupted by the Sith. But this civil war and everything, and while Death Watch is not palatable, and I don't like their whole aim and the way that they go after things, and never mind the fact that they're going against Satine, but like you can understand them and where they're coming from. And I think that so when you see that symbology line up, it lets you know that good can become bad, bad can become good.
Well, and what I love too is this whole thing, it's playing off the fears of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You create a sense of fear, and then you offer them what they think is a solution. It's basically the classic mob mentality, right?
Right. We set fire to your store, and you can pay us, and we'll put it out.
Yep, pretty much. Well, and what they do is so smart here is that you make the warrior ways look like the best way. Like the warrior ways are what keep us safe. So I think that's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, if you adopt our lifestyle, it's a sort of like cultural thing where it's like, oh, don't you see the error? But what's really interesting about it is that it speaks as well to the fact that Death Watch isn't cunning like this, because the whole way they were trying this wasn't to win over hearts and minds with any sort of stage theater, but they wanted to force their way back into power.
Yeah.
And it takes a truly devious mind to say, no, we'll act like the bad guys, and then you can be the good guys. And so it shows the lack of deviousness that Pre-Vizsla and Death Watch, they're all motivated by this frustration. And it's a bad motivation, and it's even a bad goal that they have, but they don't have the vision of the truly corrupt. They have the vision of the frustrated.
Right. Well, and that's goes back to that point of what Maul said, is that they have this honor, and we will use that against them, right? And, as bad as Vizsla is, he truly believes in this idea of the warrior culture of the Mandalorians. He truly believes that this is what's better for Mandalore, and there is some honor in that. And so I think that, again, that's just the difference between him and Maul, where Maul is willing to do whatever it takes, but he's also doing it in all of these like super underhanded, devious ways that the honor-bound code of Vizsla can't think of, right?
Right. And I also think that there's such an interesting statement about populism here, because when they talk about how Vizsla has entered the palace, shall we stop them? Satine's response is, how can we? How can we? The people are with them. And it's such a statement about the dangers of, the crowd is fickle, brother. How easy it is to sway majority opinion.
I mean,
in your favor.
This is what happens when mob rule rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it's not based on any democratic system that has any kind of checks and balances to it. It's very easy to sway any populace to your opinion, and so.
Yes, and also it's not just about fooling them. It's not just about the theater. It's about the fact that you tap into that frustration, and that they are, when people are at times emotional thinkers, and if you give them the opportunity, they will ignore reason. Yeah. And that is exactly what Vizsla. But again, what's interesting is Maul is the one who knows this. Maul is the one who figures this out, and so we have that pre-foreshadowing again of exactly how Palpatine is going to topple the Republic. He's going to get everybody to call for him to be raised up to Emperor by tapping into their frustrations and saying, "Oh, look at these people! They can't get anything done. What a corrupt system. This is so bad. I'm a good guy. You should elevate me.
Well, this whole conversation that we're having with Almec and Satine here about him saying, it was my corruption and black market deals that kept you in power, that allowed people to have faith in the system, basically.
Right.
And her saying that, no, that's not the answer. Corruption is never the answer. And that back and forth, that basically saying, yes, there's always going to be a little bit of black dealings, on the side. And we just have to accept that, and she is so much more the idealist in that. And it's just an interesting conversation back and forth. And it kind of mirrors in some ways the Jedi, in the sense that, the Jedi letting go of all evil, letting go of all desire for themselves, and letting go of all of that there shouldn't be a hint or trace of that in themselves, because the dark path, if you start down that forever, it will dominate your destiny. And it's interesting that Satine, in her pacifism and her belief in the ways to do things, kind of mirror the Jedi way. And when they have that argument, when her and Obi-Wan have that argument in the season 2 episodes where we first meet her, very similar.
Do you think that things would have gone differently between Vizsla and Maul if Vizsla had not taken the extra step of humiliating Maul in front of the crowd? Do you think that there was still a way back from that specific edge? Things had gone sour. Things had gone badly. But it seems to me as if Vizsla's decision to go that extra step to humiliate Maul made it even worse. It wasn't Maul wasn't going to be, chastened and go off, but he outright humiliates him. And it seems like that's a constant thing throughout history of you should know when to stop. Don't humiliate the person you defeated, because you will only give them more fodder to come after you, more reason to come after you.
Yeah, I think, in some ways you're right. And, you can see Vizsla's pride gets in the way here. And Maul, obviously, because of what he's done, because he knows he will never be able to have any control really over Vizsla, now is looking for somebody that he will be able to control. And so, Vizsla in many ways has just sealed his fate with those actions.
And in this scene that we're looking at right now, where Maul and Savage are having their prison break, their very, very sedate prison break, you see another Emperor Vader situation where you have somebody with the raw power who goes in front of the person in control, throwing people around, killing indiscriminately. And so, you have a mirror there then of, in the beginning we had sort of a mirror of Kenobi and Palpatine back in the first episode here, and now we have a mirror of Palpatine and Vader happening in this episode.
And this is fascinating, too. What I love is how, they bring back Almec here, from the last time we were at Mandalore, and we had Ahsoka had a big role in bringing him down, and it's just interesting how much of a role that Ahsoka and Obi-Wan play in the history of Mandalore when you think about it. And that what will we see here is that Almec will willingly join Maul because it will allow him to be in power and basically kind of do what he wanted to do in the first place, which is keep Mandalore strong, keep Mandalore what he thinks is going to be safe, and do exactly what he was talking to Satine about, which is we'll allow some corruption to happen, but it'll keep us safe in the end. We're going to make a deal with the literal devil.
And keep in mind again, the join us or die isn't necessarily laid out in specific or straight up by Maul here. He's having this conversation with Almec, saying, hey, yeah, we were allied with them, but we need you, and that sort of thing, while Savage is choking and killing somebody behind him. So it's it's not flat out said, join me or die. It's, hey, let's join. Oh, yeah. Yeah, my brother's killing that guy right now who is opposing us. So you can sort of do math on that one, right?
Well, and this is another moment where Maul is going to use the honor-bound society of the Mandalorians against them, because he knows that Vizsla cannot refuse this, or he would look weak in front of his men and he would lose them. So it's like he's put Vizsla between a rock and a hard place,
Yeah, and the insanity. Give him his weapon. Why on earth would you give him his weapon?
I know you have the Darksaber, but bro, you do not know how to use it like he does.
Nope. No, you do not. Although, of course, it ties into the Mandalorian, because how does Moff Gideon have that thing? And I got to find out why. But the fact, again, we were talking about with the bounty hunters, how being a Force user doesn't make you invincible. Vizsla kind of holds his own. Like, the outcome is never in dispute, but Vizsla kind of holds his own here.
Well,
which is kind of impressive.
You think about it, and what have we learned? What have we learned from Rebels is that many of the Mandalorian weapons were used to fight Jedi, specifically. And so, and Vizsla is a warrior. He's been training his entire life, just like Maul. So he doesn't have the Force, but he has a ton of ability. And so it makes this just a fascinating fight and a great fight.
When Maul is down and he fires those discs at him, why doesn't he fire the rocket?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a really.
Do you think it's Vizsla's pride that causes him not to use it, or is it panic, or I want to say pride. I think Vizsla overestimated his ability.
I feel like he's underestimated the ability of just the Jedi or a Sith like this in general. And the fact that they're both fighting dirty, and he doesn't realize necessarily just how dirty it's going to get. So,
yeah, or there's a difference between fighting for pride and fighting for victory and fighting for life. And Maul is always fighting for life.
Yep. Yeah,
I
to the death. There is no,
right. I almost think there's some part of Vizsla's brain that thinks that simply winning is an option or simply losing is an option, and it's like with Maul, there is no option except life or death. That's it. Oof. Man, just the brutality of beheading. I claim this sword and my rightful place as leader of Death Watch. Like you said, using the rules of the system against itself.
Well, and
but also Sam Witwer's voice talent.
Oh, it's perfect. But this is the thing that is so interesting here. No outsider shall ever rule Mandalore. We are still firmly in a place right now where Mandalorians, it is a people. It's not just a culture.
Yep.
And so Death Watch is firmly against Mandalorians being for anyone but the Mandalorians. And this is what I think, this is where the honor of somebody like Bo-Katan, makes her a totally different type of character. Like, she truly was fighting for what she believed was the best for Mandalore, and she will show that in her actions throughout the rest of this arc.
Can you imagine being on Mandalore, being a Mandalorian at this time period? How confusing everything must be.
Yeah. Every 5 seconds you have a new person telling you something that they say is the truth.
Why didn't how many people after the speech, that when All Met comes out and everything, there has to be a story of somebody in the crowd that just goes, "That's it, I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm gone. I'm just leaving."
We've had 3 regime changes in the last 2 hours.
Although, in a sense, that's sort of like what happened with the Soviet Union, right? Like the October Revolution didn't immediately go into the Soviet Union. Like there was a lot of tumult and people, trying to institute the different systems and everything. And it just, I mean, this is a similar sort of situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is the fascinating thing. You have the puppet government now. You have Almec, who's the head and the face, and you will have Maul behind the scenes doing what he wants to do.
And Maul on the throne. Look at the difference in the way that Satine sits on a throne or Padme sits on a throne and the way Maul sits on a throne. Maul lounges in it like it's my chair. Whereas you see in the body language of Padme and Satine, an acceptance of that responsibility, that need for order and discipline.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I like that you bring that up because, him kind of just lounging in that chair as though he's like the king of everything. There is a massive difference. And what it shows there is that for them, it is about respecting the honor of what it means to sit in that place and do what is best for all the people. For Maul, it is just another thing to be used, abused, and then thrown away.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's good stuff. And, I think it's time for us to John, at this point, we can jump into the last episode of this arc. And this one is called The Lawless. So...
Not Lucy Lawless.
No.
Lawless.
Different type of Lawless. So,
yes.
If you want to see her, please see Xena, Warrior Princess, and or Battlestar Galactica. But
yes,
I'll give us a countdown. 3, 2, 1, play.
In memory of Ian Abercrombie.
That was when we lost him.
I know
it was tough.
And the thing is, that note reminds me, right? Ian Abercrombie, morality separates heroes from villains. What another great... I mean, whoever wrote these things, was it the job of the writer? Or I want to find out what the process was for coming up with those, because it feels like it should have been a full-time job of somebody who watched the episode over and over again and was like, it feels like this is the theme.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But getting back to Ian Abercrombie, what's so interesting is I think about Abercrombie. I think about Sam Witwer. I think about... Taylor. I think about these actors in the Clone Wars, and I think about how much longer they played these roles than the people on screen, and it's so weird. I accept both as the absolute truth of the voice of the character. It's almost like I remember my cousin saying, we accept banana-flavored lollipop as the same as what an actual banana tastes like, and they're not alike at all, but we accept them both as true. I'm like, that's how I feel. Like, Ian Abercrombie is the Emperor to me.
Mm-hmm. I just love Bo-Katan here in this moment where she quotes, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." And it's great to see Corgi back too, because that brings back those episodes we've seen before. So I really appreciate how they're using all of the story and the history that they've created in the Clone Wars to tell this story.
And something else, and I think we've touched on this before, but you look at the female representation in the Clone Wars. Many, many diverse, interesting female characters. Even background characters. It's not just a lead. There are women everywhere, especially on Mandalore. And I think that it's such a thing that the show needs to be recognized for. And it carried through to Rebels as well, where there was so much female representation. People should be, if anybody's on the fence about watching the shows, you should point to it and say, if you're looking for a show that really, brings that to bear, here's your show.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great thought, and I think it's one of the things that the show does really, really well, and of course it just continues on into Rebels in an incredible way, and so I love this scene too, where we get to see what it looks like to see two Mandalorians fighting with jetpacks on. It's so cool. And who cares about physics because it doesn't matter. It's just looks so great.
But this scene that we're watching where we have jetpack fights, this, if anything, is so Star Wars because I look at it, and if I really break it down mentally, I think to myself, if Lucas could have done this, he would have.
Oh, yeah.
And in a sense, it's why I think the animated shows get so interesting is because those limitations of production are thrown out.
Yes.
It's not as hard to figure out how to do speeder bikes. You know, like figuring out speeder bikes in the era of film and blue screen was 1,000 times harder than animate a jetpack fight. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the animators because it was very difficult,
right.
And the editors and everything like that. But those limitations are different.
I like how everybody's always calling Obi-Wan and asking for help.
Yes. Yeah, right. Well, I like the fact that that Kia D. Mundi and Yoda basically were monitoring Obi-Wan's calls.
Yeah. They're checking his caller ID.
they have a little monitor on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Where it's like, who's Obi-Wan getting a call from now?
Another lady.
Yeah.
I love this scene just because of I appreciate the tact that especially Yoda has.
Mm-hmm.
And so I appreciate that. And how difficult this is for them to bring this to Obi-Wan. But it's interesting because, Yoda talked about when Maul reared his ugly head that they would deal with it. And here we see Yoda say that we can't.
Yes, that's true. But again, it speaks to, you talked about how Maul used the rules and regulations of Death Watch against them. The Jedi use their rules and regulations against themselves. The right thing to do here is to go and help Satine. Period. Full stop. That's the right thing to do. But they don't because they've given themselves over to these bureaucratic rules that overpower their any sense of their right and wrong.
Yeah, even though they know that it's the right thing to do and that this is dangerous. But I really love that we are going to get, Obi-Wan doing a very Anakin thing.
Yes. And there's again that speaks to, there are so many lessons that Obi-Wan seems to have missed giving Anakin. Where it is Anakin just, and I love seeing the Twilight again.
Yeah,
sorry, we just had a shot of the Twilight coming back.
It's so great,
and it's asymmetrical and it's beautiful. Oh yes, I think there's plenty of stories involving the Twilight that we never got. Mm-hmm. But in true Star Wars form, you don't need all of them. You see the ship, the Twilight, come back, and you look at it and you say, "Oh, that's interesting. What could have happened there?" It's that way that I've always praised Star Wars at its best. It doesn't try to over-explain things. It engages your imagination. And you say, oh, I saw what that was before. I see what it is now. Let me figure out what happened in between.
I love that we get the same outfit that Obi-Wan had when he was undercover.
I also love the fact that here in this scene that we're watching right now, he basically pulls a Han Solo gag.
It's great. It's great. Actually,
and
maybe it was...
Get the guard up and take the armor.
Could you get your help? Could you get your help out here?
Right. Well, just like Boba Fett knows not to be tricked by Han Solo in the asteroid field chase because he'd seen the trick before of powering down and hanging on to something.
I love, too, that Bo-Katan is watching, and she sees, this character take the armor, and she gives them the okay to let him stay, and I gotta say, it's so cool to see Obi-Wan Kenobi in Mandalorian armor. It actually works really well.
Did we ever get this this action figure? Because it feels like we should have.
I need to look. I was thinking that, and I was like, I got to look this up, but because I don't think we did.
But it also, maybe we could get somebody. I think we have a friend of the show who does custom figures. We might be able to make this happen.
That's true.
But also keep in mind, Bo-Katan letting him go plays right into what she said to Satine in the last episode, or earlier, which was the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
It's true, yeah.
She knows that this is an enemy of Maul.
Mm-hmm. I also really love that when she sees him, she immediately just gives him a big hug, and he's a little taken aback about that, but then he kind of gives in and gives her the hug back. It's great.
I'm always going to be a fan of elevator confrontations, too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it predates Captain America, the Winter Soldier. You know, I just love the whole situation of I have no other choice. I gotta fight my way out of this.
Well, it's cool to see, you know, I mean, this whole scene here of Obi-Wan trying to rescue his friend, but, you know, more importantly, this is the rightful ruler of Mandalore that has, you know, that the Republic will do nothing about because basically it doesn't benefit them. Again, we got back to the whole idea of greed.
Now, I have a question for you. Obviously, the armor that Death Watch is wearing is not as resilient as what we've seen the Mandalorian wearing in the show of the same name. So I'm guessing, I want your take. Is this not Beskar? Or is it simply that the weapons were developed to defeat Beskar in this era, but they're no longer in use by the time?
Well, they are getting shot by other Mandalorian weapons, so that it raises the question there. But I don't know. You know,
and the Twilight's gone.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. I just love that Obi-Wan can find a way to save him and Satine out of this. This is pretty awful.
Yeah, I mean, Saint Obi-Wan pulls through again.
To not be dead, honestly. So,
but I would have to say that with the Twilight being destroyed like this, I have to say that they're like Anakin. Anakin would have flown into a rage. Like this would have been the moment. It wouldn't have had to be Dooku. He would have just slaughtered everybody around if the Twilight had been destroyed. I'd love to see a story where Obi-Wan has to break it to Anakin. Anakin, I'm so sorry, but Twilight's no more. What do you mean no more? What do I got to go pick it up somewhere? No, Anakin, it's far worse than that. Yeah, it's on Mandalore, right? Well, in a manner of speaking.
What I really appreciate here is that after Obi-Wan's almost died, that there's no way for him to be able to face down Maul and the rest of these Mandalorians by himself. Like, he just does not have the strength to be able to do that, and I appreciate them not making the Jedi superheroes, you know?
Right. Well, we see the Jedi do incredible stuff, but again, just like the fight between Maul and Vizsla, it doesn't mean you're unstoppable. Right. It doesn't mean you're invincible. You are still, you know, a human being. You can still fail. You can still get hurt.
I think this is one of my favorite moments, and obviously it's one of the saddest moments, but I do think this is one of the places that shows Obi-Wan's commitment to the light and the scene of him not being able to, not letting himself give in to the dark side, even though watching this person die that he loves. It's an incredibly moving scene. But it also shows the resolve of both of these characters, right? To stay true to what they know is the most important, which are these principles to which keep them on the right side of the light. And I think there's such a beauty to that.
I never planned on killing you, but I will make you share my pain is such a beautiful and perfect sentiment. And this is still one of the most emotionally charged moments. But think about this. Think about this poetic rhyme. Obi-Wan sees the woman that he obviously still loves killed in front of him. But doesn't fly into a rage, doesn't lay waste to everybody, is present in the moment in his sorrow and what his feelings are.
Well, and
Anakin essentially kills the woman he loves himself, and then blames everybody else and tries to kill Obi-Wan. Like, look at the different ways of handling grief and tragedy. Which one do you choose? It's another Star Wars thing. Which one are you going to choose, good or evil?
Well, and to have that moment where, you know, she said, "Remember, Obi-Wan, I've loved you always, and I always will." Like, it's such a gorgeous moment because I was thinking about this today, and you know, knowing we're going to watch these. Does Obi-Wan sometimes sit at his home on Tatooine and think about what could have been?
I'm sure.
Like, that he could have had a happy life, kids with Satine, you know, like that, you know, it just...
I imagine that Obi-Wan sitting there thinks about Satine and what if she'd been alive and they could have raised Luke.
Yeah, oh gosh.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He sees Owen and Beru, and he sees what he could... He lives in the shadow of, you know, his alternate life.
Yeah.
Everything he might have really wanted that whole time. But chose not to have.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This fight, man, with Bo-Katan, where she's taking on all of these Mandalorians at once, is incredible.
I also love the fact that they continually use the jetpack gag.
Yeah.
The jetpacks are continually shown as a liability for Mandalorians.
I love it. And you are, I'm Bo-Katan. I'm here to rescue you. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. Well, again, a mirror of, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
Yep. And I kind of like that she kind of like, he flies away and she kind of gives us like, look like, man, there's something about this guy. Kind of like this dude. You know, it's... So and it's something where I've always kind of wanted, honestly, the Obi-Wan series to kind of have a reason for them to meet back up.
I also will say right here, we're at the scene where the Chancellor arrives
you
on...
mean Darth Sidious arrives.
Yeah. Arrives on Mandalore.
Whatever his name is.
whoever he is in this moment. Arrives on Mandalore. He does what Luke does when Luke arrives at Jabba's. There are two guards, and he chokes them out. Now, Luke does not kill those Gamorrean guards, but it emphasizes again that Luke's on that edge. He's on that knife's edge when he shows up at Jabba's.
Yeah,
everybody forgets that Luke, it's still in question of where he's going to go at the beginning of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Man, this is one of my favorite things about this whole arc is all of these fights that we're getting with the Mandalorians against each other. You know, Obi-Wan brandishing his lightsaber, and they've got these cool little shields too that pop up out of their gauntlets, and then, you know, this door is about to open, and it is just one of the most astounding, most visually stunning scenes that the Clone Wars has ever done. It's just, as the doors open, and it is all-out war.
And it's about to have one of the best exchanges. Maul must really want you dead. You have no idea.
You have no idea. It's great.
Just, again, the voice acting is so incredibly perfect.
And Maul is about to get spanked, honestly. Like, he's been naughty, and it's time to, like, put him down for good.
He's been a naughty boy. And you know what? And there's an interesting thing that's about to happen right here that explains something in Revenge of the Sith. It either does or it doesn't. It depends on your point of view, of course. So I'm most impressed with seeing you survive your injuries, right? Maul is immediately willing to throw away a Savage. Yes, Master, it's me. Yes. Sidious knows about Savage. Sidious, in a way, is responsible for Savage, but he's still going to use it as a reason to do what he does. And it's hysterically funny, but the little canon note here, quote unquote canon, whatever, is Sidious, 1 saber, 2 saber, both look identical. So when Sidious loses his saber in Revenge of the Sith, and then he has it again later, you could have done all of these mental gymnastics. Well, he had it recovered. He was able to call it back to his hand or whatever. In this, no, he just has 2. So he lost his first one when he was fighting Windu, and he had a backup.
Yeah. You know, I think that what I love as well is that, you know, he calls Maul a rival, but also this is going to be about teaching Maul another lesson.
Yes.
So,
well, Maul's a rival, but is more useful to him alive than dead. So just because you're a rival doesn't mean he'll eradicate you like he's going to do to the Jedi. It means that if he can find a way to use you, Maul will die, but Mandalore will survive. We always survive.
And I love
and
this
that
moment, too.
foreshadows foreshadows the Mandalorian.
Yep.
We will always survive.
I love this too when he says, "You were Satine's sister. I'm so sorry," and it's the same exact tone and inflection of, you know, Anakin's the father, isn't he? I'm so sorry. You know, it's just this deep sorrow, and like I love that this arc plays out just how much Obi-Wan has lost. Like he just continues to lose, and yet at the same time stay who he is.
Did you see again? Did you see again there in the moment that we're watching how the lightsabers?
Yes.
They looked a little bit different when they were spinning around. It's not constant. It's interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you like that. It's just I find it such a fascinating effect.
No, and this fight is just so brutal too. Like Sidious is not holding back. He, you know, and he's just playing with Savage right now as a toy.
Well, I love that when Savage is coming at him and his lightsabers aren't on, that it's like a drunken master thing. He's just fluidly dodging everything. Ooh. And he kills Savage the same way that Maul gets rid of Qui-Gon with the backward stab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Except he has 2.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's interesting too to see Savage, you know, as he's dying, lose all of the Dathomiri magic and kind of revert to who he was, which is fascinating.
Yeah. The first and only reality of the Sith, there can be only 2, which is a debate point for the ages, as everybody keeps saying. But what about Inquisitors and Knights of Ren and all of those guys?
What I think it's interesting, too, is that, you know, he clearly says, you've been replaced, you know? Like, I don't consider you a Sith anymore.
Yeah, you got fired, and I'm not rehiring you. Your position's been filled. Thank you for applying.
I love Maul fighting with the darksaber.
Oh, yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Oh, but so much about the choreography of this is so perfect.
And I love Sidious, too. He's like, I'm done fighting with lightsabers. It's time to just throw you around like a rag doll.
And there's also this idea that he's throwing him up against this beautiful artistic mural, which is a reminder of the fact that, you know, when we first meet Palpatine / Sidious in The Phantom Menace, he's surrounded by art. Mm-hmm. But then art has no meaning for him anymore. He doesn't care about it. Now it's just there.
It's fascinating too because, you know, he says that I have other uses for her. This is the thing, like, and one of the reasons we wanted to celebrate our 200th episode by watching these episodes here was we're going to be getting the new season of the Clone Wars, and, you know, we know that the Siege of Mandalore will be coming, and so this is going to play directly into that, and I think that's just so exciting that we are finally going to be getting that finale to that story, which, you know, we saw play out a little bit in the Ahsoka novel, right? They gave us a little hint and a little taste of it, and now I just can't wait to finally see that on screen. I think it's going to be amazing.
I agree. I look forward to it a great deal, and I've really loved going back through this arc with you because it's exciting not just because the Clone Wars is coming back, but because I really think that the Clone Wars is like that really beautiful thing that can, it's going to sound corny, but the television shows have always been, whether it's Clone Wars or Rebels, have always been the thing around which all the fans can gather. People can argue about the prequels. People can quibble about Return of the Jedi. People can take potshots at each other over the sequel trilogy. But it's like the Clone Wars is holy ground. It just is. It's so quintessentially important to what Star Wars is. And trying to define that it's such a beautiful thing. I'm always excited to run across somebody who hasn't seen the show and say, you should check this out. Come on over and check this out. And the fact that it's so readily and easily available on Disney Plus now as a way for somebody to come in and explore, I think is just a fantastic thing. And this and Rebels and The Mandalorian, I think, have always been that point toward where Star Wars is always going to excel, which is long-form storytelling.
Yeah.
The movies can be great, but the long-form stuff is really what's going to invest you.
And I think this is one of the things that, as you're talking, I was just thinking about this series allows George Lucas the opportunity to fully explore his world in a way that there was no way to do in a 2-hour movie each time. And I think that's the thing that really blows my mind and is so exciting then when you're watching this series, because the ever-expansive imagination of George Lucas is just able to run. And, obviously the show at the beginning is limited by the type of animation, but as they move forward, you see that they just continue to refine things to where it is beautiful, moving art that we're watching, but it's also playing out these incredible stories and just adding to the mythos. And I think that's what makes this just so exciting,
Absolutely. And I can't emphasize enough just how spot on you are. And even beyond that, just like we're seeing in a sense with The Mandalorian right now, other directors, other talent can come in, and it becomes not just a way for them to contribute and help grow Star Wars, but also for them to learn that core essence, that thing that defines it, that sets it apart, that makes it more than just any other franchise. And they can carry that forward so that when they go to other projects or get a Star Wars project, like Deborah Chow like Deborah Chow helming the Obi-Wan series. It's like she came into The Mandalorian and that was her, introduction to it. Oh, okay. I know what I do well, and I know the language that you use. Let's put them both together. And she goes on and she directs, 2 of the most beloved episodes of the first season of The Mandalorian because she gets it. She understands.
Yes. Yeah.
And I want to see the other directors go on and take on other projects as well. Just like in the Clone Wars, I'd love to see people from the Clone Wars come forward and go to other shows and other projects, because it's almost like it feels almost like this was a Star Wars boot camp to get people up to speed on everything.
Yeah, no, that's a really great thought. And I was thinking about that too. One of the things that we don't really think of is that, the different episodes of the Clone Wars had different directors, and so, but it was all kind of, under the watchful eye of somebody like Filoni and Lucas, and that's the thing. It's like you all come together and you make this work, right? And I think that's something that's why the Mandalorian is working so well. And it's why I think Rebels became something that worked so well. And so it's you get these people who really can help you create great stories, and then you let those directors go, and they kind of bring their own little pizzazz to it, their own little idiosyncrasies that just kind of give it a different flair and bring things alive in a slightly different way. And I think that's really cool. And it's again, I think this is what makes me so excited to see these last episodes of the Clone Wars. And part of that is because this has become something like you were talking about. It's so ingrained into the history of Star Wars now, and for me, it is absolutely 100% one of my absolute favorite parts of the entire Star Wars saga. Clone Wars is, to me, as important and wonderful as, watching Episode 5. And that's my favorite Star Wars movie. So that's just how much this show means to me as part of the saga.
And what you said, except I'll put in Episode 3, because that's my favorite part of the of the films. But you know what? I mean, it has been a heck of a tour going through this arc. Matt, if people want to tease out some extra thoughts of yours, especially with Clone Wars, coming up as of the recording of this, where can they find you online?
Yeah, we're going to be obviously real excited with the Clone Wars starting again, but hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Vero under the name MattRushing02. I'm here on the network doing Outpost with Drea Kaufman as we talk about Harry Potter each and every week, one chapter at a time. I'm over on the Trek FM network. I do The Orb with Chris Jones. We talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine when we get a chance to record with each other. And then I'm doing the 602 Club, which is our general geek show. We're talking about all the fandoms we love. Every once in a while, John's over there talking some Star Wars or something else with us. But honestly, it's not confined to just Star Wars. It's everything that we can do. And last but not least, I do a show called Cinema Stories with my friend Courtney, and we talk about films through the lens of faith. John, if anybody wants to, maybe they want to send you some great gifts from the Clone Wars or just talk Clone Wars or anything Star Wars, where can they hit you up on the old social media platforms?
Well, you can find me as Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE on Twitter. Unfortunately, I just can't quit it. You can also find me on Instagram. And you can find me on Letterboxd offering pithy comments about terrible films like Creepshow 3. And you can, there's some secret projects I got going on right now, and I'll let you know about those as they come up. But primarily, just look for Kessel Junkie, and that's where you're going to find me. So, that being said, wow, it looks like Crimson Dawn is trying to. I think they rented this room after us, so I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.